Hello friends, it's a joy to come to you today as we reflect on the question, what do you do after getting bad news? What do you do after getting bad news? And I want us to start with an imagination. Supposing you've gone to the hospital and after routine checks, after taking all precaution, listening to your doctor, and acting upon all the recommendations, he gives you the news that perhaps you have cancer. That's bad news. Let's flip it a bit the other way around. And then he adds on that this cancer is in its early stages, and because of that, it is treatable. That now sounds like good news. But you know, when you first get bad news, there is a sense of anxiety. Everyone who gets bad news is a sense of anxiety to some extent. And Jesus gives us a model on how to deal with this. I'll read you a scripture. In Matthew chapter 6, from verse 30, it says, this is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire. Will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? Verse 31 says, so do not worry, saying, what shall I eat? Or what shall we drink? Or what shall we wear? Anxiety in a sense that you are thinking about the future. How will I live with this cancer? How will I deal with this cancer? And Jesus tells us that it's inadequacy of faith. How does this happen? You know, the grace of God is sufficient, not only in the past, not only in the present, but also in the future. And what inadequate faith means is that your faith is there, yes, but it's just not enough. It's not that you don't have faith. No, it's there. It's just inadequate. In other words, you know that God has carried you up to today. You know that God is carrying you now. But the question is, your brother will, how will it be in the future? And that brings the idea of future grace. The Lord who carried you yesterday and He is carrying you now is the same God who will carry you tomorrow. So what the doctrine of future grace tells us is that the grace of God is not only a subject of the present or of the past, but it's also a subject of the future. The same God yesterday is the same God today and will be the same God tomorrow. How does that help me when I receive bad news? First, acknowledging that my faith is inadequate. We see this when the disciples are with Jesus and they tell him, help my unbelief. In Mark chapter 9 verse 12, this is what the disciples say, I believe, help my unbelief. I believe, help my unbelief. So inadequate faith is not lack of faith, it's not lack of belief, but you're asking God to help your unbelief. That's the first point. When you get bad news, it leaves us vulnerable, and we should be vulnerable enough. It's okay to just say, Lord, help my unbelief. Help my unbelief. Let's look at Jesus when he gets the news that Lazarus is sick. He got the news that Lazarus is sick and went on with his business. Eventually he comes when Lazarus has passed. Now that's very interesting. That's in John chapter 11, because it tells you that you can grow from having bad news to the worst news, you know. But this is what future grace tells us. Future grace says that I may not have received healing now, but I'm going to receive my resurrection. What future grace tells us is that God grows our faith through both what He provides and what He withholds. If He has withheld healing, it's because He's providing resurrection. If He has withheld my finances, it's because He's providing the healing. When God withholds something, there is provision of another on the other side. And so God leads us through both what He provides and what He withholds. And it is my prayer that when you receive bad news, it seems like bad news, always remember that God leads through what He provides and what He withholds. And that should be a reason enough for our faith to grow when we make the prayer and say, God, help my unbelief. It is my prayer that whenever you get bad news, how will you navigate that? Make that prayer and say, God, help my unbelief. And then secondly, remember that God grows our faith through what He provides and what He withholds. What you are seeing on the outside is just one thing out of the thousand many other things that God is doing behind the scenes. And as someone who believes in God holding you in the present just as He's held you in the past and will hold you in the future, we always need to remember that those three things mean God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Nothing, absolutely nothing has taken you by surprise. There is good news on the other end wherever you see bad news. God richly bless you as you remember that God is leading you through what He provides and what He withholds. See you next time in the next video.